The snow had settled thick and silent over the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania on the morning of December 30th, 2022. At the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in the town of Albrightsville, federal agents in tactical gear were already awake, moving with precision. Their eyes were fixed on a modest two-story home with gray siding and a red front door. Inside, Bryan Christopher Kohberger, the man suspected of one of the most horrific murders in recent U.S. history, was asleep in his childhood bedroom. It had been 47 days since the brutal stabbings of four University of Idaho students in their off-campus home in Moscow. The case had captivated and terrified the nation. The murders were senseless, savage, and seemingly without motive. For lives, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin had been taken in the dead of night, and for weeks the killer remained a ghost. But behind the scenes, law enforcement had been quietly building their case. Agents had begun closing in on Bryan Kohberger weeks before. The key break came when a tan leather K-bar knife sheath was found near Maddie Mogen's body. Inside its snap was a single male DNA profile. That DNA didn't match anyone in the FBI's national database, but gave them something to work with. Meanwhile, surveillance footage of a white Hyundai Elantra circling the neighborhood in the early hours of November 13th was released to the public. Within days, an Idaho State University officer identified a matching car registered to Kohberger, a 28-year-old PhD student in criminology at Washington State University, just 10 miles from the crime scene. What followed was weeks of round-the-clock surveillance. The FBI tracked Kohberger's movements, analyzed cell phone tower data, dug through academic records, and studied the behavior. When he abruptly drove cross-country with his father from Pullman, Washington, to Pennsylvania for winter break, they followed discreetly, relentlessly, in Albrightsville. The Kohberger family home sat nestled among pine trees, just like thousands of others in the Poconos. But it became ground zero for one of the most anticipated arrests in modern American criminal history. At 1:30 a.m. on December 30th, agents from the FBI, Pennsylvania State Police, and local SWAT teams prepared a breach. It was a coordinated, high-risk operation, armed with no-knock arrest warrant. They surrounded the house in complete silence. The warrant, signed off hours earlier, authorized them to detain Bryan Kohberger for 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. Around 3 a.m., flashlights pierced the windows. A loudspeaker echoed through the cold. "FBI, come to the door. We have a warrant." When no one responded, the agents used a ram to break through the front door. They moved quickly, weapons drawn, clearing each room. Kohberger was reportedly found in the kitchen or hallway, wearing black shorts and a t-shirt. Stunned but calm, he offered no resistance. He was handcuffed, read his rights, and taken outside into the snowy darkness. His parents, still in shock, were escorted away as agents began sweeping the home. Inside the house, they executed a search warrant targeting Kohberger's electronics, clothing, and personal effects. They seized computer, several knives, black gloves, a phone, a shop vac, and a black face mask. Later filings revealed the discovery of hair strands, possible bloodstains, and a pillowcase with reddish-brown spots. But the most damning link to the crime scene came from the trash. In the days leading up to the arrest, agents had covertly collected garbage from the Kohberger family's trash bins. They found a Q-tip that tested positive for DNA belonging to Bryan's father. When compared to the unknown male DNA found on the knife sheath in Idaho, the results were stunning. The genetic material was a perfect paternal match. The likelihood that it came from anyone other than Bryan Kohberger was less than 1 in 100 quadrillion. By 4 a.m., news of the arrest had not yet broken. The public still didn't know that the man who had eluded justice for nearly 2 months was finally in custody. Later that morning, the Monroe County Correctional Facility released Kohberger's mugshot. His face was pale, emotionless, with dark circles under his eyes. The photograph would be plastered across national media within hours. Standing at 6 feet 0 inches, weighing approximately 185 pounds, he had the build of someone physically capable of the crime, but the face of a graduate student, which only deepened the mystery. That same day, Monroe County court documents were unsealed, revealing that Kohberger had been charged in Idaho with first-degree murder and felony burglary. The extradition hearing was scheduled for January 3rd, 2023. For now, he would remain in a Pennsylvania jail cell. While the public reeled from the news, law enforcement held a press conference in Moscow, Idaho. Police Chief James Fry confirmed the arrest and thanked the community for its patience and support. He revealed that Kohberger had been arrested in Pennsylvania and that the investigation was far from over. At Washington State University, where Kohberger had been pursuing a doctorate in criminal justice and criminology, classmates and professors were stunned. Some described him as brilliant but socially awkward. Others recalled eerie behavior, overanalyzing crime scene discussions or boasting about his understanding of serial killers. He had even led classroom conversations about forensic psychology and criminal profiling just weeks after the Idaho murders. In hindsight, many found his academic background deeply unsettling. Was Kohberger using his studies to plan the perfect crime? Or had he simply become obsessed with the mechanics of murder? On social media, speculation exploded. Internet sleuths who had been dissecting the case for weeks suddenly had a face and a name. Some posted side-by-side photos of Kohberger and surveillance image of the masked man allegedly seen inside the house. Others began combing through his Reddit posts, discovering surveys he had posted months earlier asking ex-convicts how they felt during the planning and execution of crimes. One Reddit post, under the username Inside Looking, included questions like, "Did you prepare for crime beforehand? If yes, how? What were you thinking and feeling after committing the crime? How did you choose your victim?" Now, those questions read like foreshadowing. Over the next several days, Bryan Kohberger's attorneys said he was eager to be extradited to Idaho to clear his name. On January 3rd, 2023, during a brief hearing in Monroe County, he waived extradition. Wearing a red jail jumpsuit, he spoke softly but confidently. "Yes, I have a clear head," he told a judge when asked if he understood what waiving extradition meant. That evening, he was flown under heavy guard to Pullman, Washington, then driven across the state line into Idaho. He arrived at the Latta County Jail just after 6:30 p.m., escorted by state troopers and U.S. Marshals. For the first time since the murders, the town of Moscow could breathe. The boogeyman had a name, a face, and a court date. On January 5th, 2023, Kohberger appeared before a judge in Idaho and was formally charged. Prosecutors laid out the early evidence: DNA on a knife sheath, surveillance of the white Hyundai Elantra, cell tower records showing him circling the neighborhood repeatedly, trash DNA from his parent home confirming a familial match. The judge denied bail. Kohberger will remain in custody until trial. December 30th wasn't just a day of an arrest. It was the beginning of a massive legal reckoning, not just for Bryan Kohberger, but for the community of Moscow, the victims' families, and a nation gripped by the terror of a senseless crime. For those who had mourned in silence for nearly 2 months, justice was no longer a distant hope. It had begun, and it all started with a snowy morning in Pennsylvania and a quiet knock that became a thunderous door breach.